Welcome back to Kivli Kids Cozy Corner. This is Miss Kivli. It is Monday, May 18th, and we just have a couple weeks left of school. We're going to try to get through Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think we can do it. We do have a Monday holiday, and our kiddos are out on that Thursday, the 28th, I think. So we'll try to get this done, and we'll just go from there. So it is Monday, so let's do our pledge and motto, and then we'll jump right back into Charlie and Chocolate Factory. If you remember, oh my gosh, you just found the ticket, and we get to find out what it exactly said on the ticket. So let's do pledge and motto. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And here we go. Our school motto. Begin. We are students at Peter J. Shields. We believe in kindness. We are responsible. We are persistent. We are respectful. We are bucket fillers. We drop acts of kindness into everything we do. We are Peter J. Shields. And look at our little Nemo down here. Can you see him? He's joining us. He's a little sleepy. He's always sleepy, but he's joining us today in his little bed right next to the chair. So he's a special sleeping guest, and he might start snoring. You never know with him. So let's go ahead and get started and see what's going on and what that ticket has to say, shall we? Sorry. Okay. Chapter 12. What it said on the golden ticket. Charlie burst through the front door shouting, "Mother, mother, mother!" Mrs. Bucket was in the old grandparents' room serving them their evening soup. "Mother!" yelled Charlie, rushing into them like a hurricane. "Look, I've got it. Look, Mother. Look, the last golden ticket. It's mine. I found some money in the street and I bought 2 candy bars, and the second one, it had the golden ticket. And there were crowds of people all around me wanting to see it, and the shopkeeper rescued me, and I ran all the way home, and here I am. It's the 5th golden ticket, Mother, and I found it." Mrs. Bucket simply stood and stared, while the 4 old grandparents, who were sitting in the bed balancing bowls of soups in their laps, all dropped their spoons with a clatter and froze against their pillows. For about 10 seconds, there was an absolute silence in the room. Nobody dared to speak or move. It was a magic moment. Then, very softly, Grandpa Joe said, "You're pulling our leg, Charlie, aren't you? You're having a little joke?" "But I'm not," cried Charlie, rushing up to the bed and holding out the large, beautiful golden ticket for him to see. Grandpa Joe leaned forward, took a close look, his nose almost touching the ticket. The others watched him, waiting for the verdict. Then, very slowly, with a marvelous grin spreading all over his face, Grandpa Joe lifted his head and looked straight at Charlie. The color was rushing into his cheeks, and his eyes were wide open, shining with joy. And the center of each eye, right in the very center, in the black pupil little part, a little spark of wild excitement was slowly dancing. Then the old man took a deep breath. And suddenly, without warning whatsoever, an explosion seemed to take place in him. He threw up his arms and yelled, "Yippee!" And at the same time, his long, bony body rose up out of the bed, and his bowl of soup went flying into the face of poor Grandma Josephine. It was a fantastic leap. This old fellow of 96 and a half, who hadn't been out of bed in these 20 years, jumped onto the floor and started dancing a dance of victory in his pajamas. "Yippee!" he shouted. "3 cheers for Charlie! Hip, hip, hooray!" At that point, the door opened and Mr. Bucket walked into the room. He was cold and tired, and he looked it. All day long, he had been shoveling snow in the streets. "Cripes!" he cried. "What's going on here?" It didn't take long to tell him what had happened. "I don't believe it," he said. "It's not possible." "Show him the ticket, Charlie," shouted Grandpa Joe, who was still dancing around the floor like a dervish in striped pajamas. "Show your father and the fifth and last golden ticket in the whole world." "Let me see it, Charlie," Mr. Bucket said, collapsing into a chair and holding out his hand. Charlie came forward with the precious document. It was a very beautiful thing, this golden ticket, having been made, so it seemed, from a sheet of pure gold, hammered out almost on the thinnest of papers. On one side, it printed some clever method in black jet letters, was the invitation itself from Mr. Wonka. Read it out loud, said Grandpa Joe, climbing back into bed again. Let's all hear exactly what it says. Mr. Bucket held the lovely golden ticket up close to his eyes, and his hands were trembling slightly, and he seemed to be overwhelmed. Excuse me. He took several deep breaths. Then he cleared his throat and said, "All right, I'll read it. Here we go. Greetings to you, the lucky finder of this golden ticket, from Mr. Willy Wonka. I shake you warmly by the hand. Tremendous things are in store for you. Many wonderful surprises await you. For now, I do invite you to come to my factory and be my guest for one whole day. And, excuse me, you and all the others who are lucky enough to find my golden ticket, I, Willy Wonka, will conduct you around the factory myself, showing you everything that there is to see. And afterwards, when it is time to leave, you will be escorted home by a procession of large trucks. These trucks, I can promise you, will be loaded with enough delicious edibles to last you and your entire household for many years. If at any time thereafter you should run out of supplies, you only have to come back to the factory and show this golden ticket, and I shall be happy to refill your cupboard with whatever you want. In this way, you will be able to keep yourself supplied with tasty morsels for the rest of your life. But this is by no means the most exciting thing that will happen on that day of your visit. I am preparing other surprises that are even more marvelous and more fantastic for you and for my beloved golden ticket holders. Mystic and marvelous surprises that will entrance, delight, intrigue, astonish, and perplex you beyond measure. In your wildest dreams, you could not imagine that such things could happen to you. Just wait and see. And now, here are your instructions. The day I have chosen for the visit is the first day in the month of February. On this day, and on no other, you must come to the factory gates at 10 o'clock sharp in the morning. Don't be late, and you are allowed to bring with you either one or two members of your own family to look after you to ensure that you don't get into mischief. One more thing. Be certain to have this ticket with you. Otherwise, you will not be admitted. Signed, Willy Wonka. The first day of February, cried Mrs. Bucket, but that's tomorrow. Today is the last day of January. I know it is. Yee, said Mr. Bucket. I think you're right. You're just in time, shouted Grandpa Joe. There's not a moment to lose. You must start making preparations at once. Wash your face, comb your hair, scrub your hands, brush your teeth, blow your nose, cut your nails, polish your shoes, iron your shirt, and for heaven's sakes, get all that mud off your pants. You must get ready, my boy. You must get ready for the biggest day of your life. Now, don't overexcite yourself, Grandpa, Mrs. Bucket said, and don't fluster poor Charlie. We all must try to keep very calm. Now, the first thing is to decide who is going with Charlie to the factory. I will, shouted Grandpa Joe, leaping out of bed at once. I'll take him. I'll look after him. You leave it to me. Mrs. Bucket smiled at the old man, and she turned to her husband and said, How about you, dear? Don't you think you ought to go? Well, Mr. Bucket said, pausing to think about it. No, I'm not sure that I should. But you must. Well, there's no must about it, my dear, Mr. Bucket said gently. Mind you, I'd love to go. It'll be tremendously exciting, but on the other hand, I believe that the person who really does deserve to go most of all is Grandpa Joe himself. He seems to know more about it than we do, provided, of course, he feels well enough to go. Yippee! Shouted Grandpa Joe, seizing Charlie by the hands and dancing around the room. Well, he certainly does seem well enough, Mrs. Bucket said, laughing. Yes, perhaps you're right after all. Perhaps Grandpa Joe should be the one to go with him. I certainly can't go myself and leave the other three old people all in bed alone for a whole day. Hallelujah! Shouted Grandpa Joe. Praise the Lord, he said. But at that point came a loud knock at the door. Mr. Bucket went to open it. The next moment, swarms of newspapermen and photographers were pouring into the house. They had tracked down the finder of the fifth golden ticket, and now all they wanted to do was get the full story on the front pages of the morning papers. For several hours, there was complete pandemonium in the little house, and it must have been nearly midnight before Mr. Bucket was able to get rid of them, so Charlie could go to bed. Chapter 13, The Big Day Arrives. The sun was shining brightly on the morning of the big day, but the ground was still white with snow and the air was very cold. Outside the gates of Wonka's factory, enormous crowds of people had gathered to watch the 5 lucky ticket holders going in. The excitement was tremendous. It was just before 10 o'clock. The crowds were pushing and shouting, and policemen with arms were linked trying to hold them back from the gates. Right beside the gates, in a small group that was carefully shielded from the crowds by the police, stood the 5 famous children, together with the grown-ups who had come with them. The tall, bony finger of Grandpa Joe could be seen standing quietly among them, and beside him, holding tightly onto his hand, was little Charlie Bucket himself. All the children except Charlie had both their mothers and fathers with them, and it was a good thing that they had, otherwise the whole party might have gotten way out of hand. They were so eager to get going that their parents were having to hold them back by force to prevent them from climbing the gates. "Be patient," cried the fathers. "Be still, it's not time yet. It's not 10 o'clock. Beside him, Charlie Bucket could hear the shouts of the people in the crowd as they pushed and fought to get a glimpse of the famous children. "There's my Violet Beauregard," he heard someone shouting. "Yep, that's her all right. I can remember her face from the newspapers." "And you know what?" somebody else shouted back. "She's chewing that dreadful old piece of gum she's had for 3 months. Look at her jaws. They're still working on it." "Who's the big fat boy?" That's Gustus Gloop." "Oh, yeah, so it is. Quite enormous, isn't he?" "Fantastic. Well, who's the kid with the picture of the Lone Ranger stenciled on his windbreaker?" "Oh, that's Mike TV. He's that television fiend." "He must be crazy. Look at all those crazy pistols he's got hanging all over him." "The one I want to see is Veruca Salt," shouted another in the crowd. "She's the girl whose father bought her 500,000 candy bars and then made the workers in his peanut factory unwrap every one of them until they found a golden ticket. He gives her anything she wants, absolutely anything. She only has to start screaming and she gets it. Dreadful, isn't it? Shocking, I call it. Which one of them do you think is her?" "That one. Over there, to the left, the little girl in the silver fur coat." "Which one is Charlie Bucket?" Charlie Bucket. He must be that skinny little shrimp standing beside that old fellow who looks like a skeleton, right close to us. Just there, see him? Why hasn't he gotten a coat on in this cold weather? Don't ask me, maybe he can't afford one. Jeepers, he must be freezing." Charlie, standing only a few paces away from the speaker, gave Grandpa Joe's hand a squeeze, and the old man looked down at Charlie and smiled. Somewhere in the distance, a church clock began striking 10. Very slowly, the loud creaking of rusting hinges, the great iron gates of the factory, began to swing open. The crowd became suddenly silent. The children stopped jumping about. All eyes were fixed upon the gates. "There he is!" somebody shouted. "That's him!" And so it was. So tomorrow, we will start chapter 14, Mr. Willy Wonka. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys are all doing well. We miss you, and we know there's still so much unknown. We don't know what's going to happen in August when we come back, what it's going to look like, but hang in there and know that this will eventually pass, and we will be able to figure things out, and we love you and care about you guys so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay connected and stay tuned, and if you're behind and it's not really Monday, May 18th, and maybe it's Monday the 25th, or it's in June, that's fine too. Keep tuning in. We love you guys so much, and we will see you as soon as we can. Take care and be safe and be kind. Love you guys. Bye.